afternoon, Mrs. Frost. Thank you for coming in today. I understand that you had some questions about Jack's scores.
Yeah, it was a bit confusing.
I understand. So Jack took a general test of achievement back in March. Now, he didn't take it all at once. It was those 4 days he was told to get enough sleep and get enough to eat.
Yeah, I remember that.
Now, an achievement test is used to test your child's skills and knowledge for his grade level from what we've been doing in class. At the top are his demographics such as name, grade, school, district, and his student ID. His student ID is a way for the school to keep his information confidential.
Okay, well, why are his scores in 2 different boxes?
Well, the first box contains the norm reference scores, which are his scores that are compared to the norm group. And the second box contains his criterion reference scores, which are his scores on how well he did based off of a specific skill.
What is a norm group?
A norm group is a group of like-minded students across the nation who took the test before it was released to the public, so we could have something to compare our students to. So for this test, 4,500 students were tested before Jack was. Are you confused about anything so far?
I understand everything so far. Could you tell me what's the difference between the basic battery and the complete battery, and how the test is broken up?
Okay, well, the test is broken up into smaller tests, and basic battery is used for when administration is trying to see how Jack or any student is doing in our main areas: reading, math, listening, and spelling. While complete battery is just how Jack has done on all the subtests.
What do all these numbers across mean? Are they good or bad?
Well, the second column is labeled the number of items, which tells you how many times on the test that each subject came up, and the raw score in the next column tells us how many Jack got right. So, for example, on total reading, there were 108 questions, and Jack got 83 correct.
Okay, but right next to it says he got a 53.
Yes, Jack ranked in the 53rd percent in the national percentiles. The national percentiles is not average of how Jack did. It tells us the ranking of how Jack did in the norm group. So if we look at this chart, now if we look over here on our bell curve, we can see that Jack scored right in the middle of where the average norm group did.
Okay, so he scored in the median of where the average students did on the test. Is there any reason he could have scored better that day?
Well, I wrote down how he seemed that day and I had no concerns. However, every test does have a margin of error. The standard error of the mean on this test is plus or minus 3, which means if he took the test over and over again, he would perform within this ranking, which we can see here under the percentile bands.
Okay, what does the column scaled score mean?
The scaled score is the raw score transformed into a standard score. In this test, scaled scores are from 200 to 800.
Okay.
And the median is 500, but the average score is between 400 and 600. So if we look at the total reading score, scaled score, it is 508, and when we look at the bell curve, it will be almost on the median, which is average in the total reading.
Okay. I see. So can we move on to the bottom scores?
Of course, like I said before, this bottom section is the criterion reference scores, which let us know how Jack is doing on a specific scale. Are there any subjects you are concerned with?
Yes, how is Jack doing in reading? And I'm not sure what structured analysis is or phonetic analysis.
In the top section, this box shows us information in each column. The first one tells us the skill we are looking at. The second one is the raw score, which is how many Jack got correct. And then the third one is the number possible, which tells us how many times these type of questions were on the test. The next 3 columns labeled low, mid, and high are examples of how well he's doing in that skill.
Okay, could you show me an example with one of the skills you were talking about?
Yes, of course. So in reading vocabulary, Jack received a 26 out of 36. And if we look here, we see Jack is scoring average in reading vocabulary. Now, structure analysis is when you break up a word during reading to determine its meaning, like understanding when dis is in front of agree, it means disagree.
Okay.
Now, if we look across, we can see his raw score was 10 and the number possible was 10. So Jack actually scored high in this area. And phonetic analysis is understanding that words are pronounced with a certain sound, such as B in baseball, it's B, not B. Here we can see his scores were 6 out of 11, which is low.
I see now. Could we go over some of Jack's stronger scores and lower scores?
Of course. With us going over this, it will help us know some of the subject techniques are proven and some of the subjects he's doing really well in. Let's go ahead and take a look at all his scores. Well, one of his stronger scores is in language subtest sentence structures. His score was a 10 and the number possible to get was 10. So he got 100% for the subtest.
That's really good to know, but what did he have to do for that subtest?
Well, there are a couple sentence structures, but we only went over 2 in our class. So the first sentence structure we went over was simple sentences. So if we look at his portfolio, he had wrote one and he said, "We like pizza." The other sentence structure we went over was compound sentences, and Jack wrote, "We like pizza and spaghetti." So on this test, they would just give him an example of these two types of sentences, and he would just have to label which one they were.
That's interesting to know, and I am glad he was able to understand that. Is there any other subtests he was strong in?
Yes, there is another subtest he was stronger in, and it was life science. His raw score was 7, and the number possible to get was 7, so he got 100% on that subtest.
Okay, what type of questions were on there?
For example, many of the life science that we talked about in class was plants and fish. And basically they just had to label it, they had to draw and label. So if we look here, Jack drew a picture of a plant and was able to label the roots, leaves, stems, and even where the seed was before it grew. In another one, he drew fish and was able to label where the fins were and explaining what they did for the fish.
Mm-hmm.
In the test, they would just give the pictures for him, and all you have to do is label the picture correctly with the words that he was given and explain what each word does for the picture.
Okay. This is all good to hear, but what should we be working on at home?
What shows here, Jack scored low in measurement, and we have been going over it in class. There are some examples it seems Jack is getting confused with, where the ruler starts, instead of starting at 0, it looks like Jack is starting at the edge of the ruler.
Okay.
So if you can practice measuring household objects and being explicit about where to begin and why it could be fun practice.
How do you know it was low?
Well, his raw score was a 5, and the number possible to get was 8, so that means it was low.
I understand that now, thank you. We will make sure to practice that at home. Is there anything else we should be working on?
Yes, in history, Jack also performed low. He got a 4 out of 6 on the test, so that means he did pretty low on that. Now, we did some activities for history, like our Galley Rock, where the students researched a founding father and created a poster with facts about him, and Jack did well. Jack actually did well in many of the history assignments, so I don't agree with these scores. However, I think if you read more nonfiction books about the founding fathers and presidents, he could be working on 2 skills at once.
Really great. I'll definitely pick up some from our library. How do you feel Jack is doing?
I think overall Jack is going in a good direction. We can see from his scores and past work what needs to be done, but also what he's doing really well in. Like here, under listening vocabulary, Jack received a raw score of 16 with a number possible of 18, which is high.
What is listening vocabulary?
Listening vocabulary, for example, is understanding what a circle is. So if I say draw a circle for the number 1, like he did in here, he should be able to draw a circle. If you look at his science and math journal, we can see that he is following directions such as numbering the pages, made a table of contents, and uses front and back of the pages.
Okay, this is a lot of information. I don't know if I'll be able to remember all of this.
Well, if you need any help at all, just contact me and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. But here's a handout explaining how to read Jack's scores.
Thank you. You have a good afternoon.
Of course, you too.